He was the kind of man people trusted without asking questions. He woke up early every day before the sun. He worked with focus and returned home tired, but calm. His life followed rules. He built, after many quiet failures. He believed control was safety. He believed silence was strength. He had learned this over many years through loss and disappointment. No one knew much about his past because he never spoke about it. People saw him as steady and dependable. Inside, he carried memories he kept locked away. He did not allow emotions to lead him. He did not allow anyone close enough to change him. This was how he survived. He lived alone in a small, clean place. Everything had its space. Nothing was extra. He liked it that way. Order made him feel calm. Chaos reminded him of things he wanted to forget. Every night, he sat in the same chair and thought about nothing on purpose. He trained his mind to stay quiet. He believed feelings were dangerous if left free, so he held them down with routine. The woman entered his life in a simple way. No dramatic moment, no instant connection. She was just there one day, working nearby, sharing the same space. At times, she did not push herself forward. She did not ask personal questions. She watched and listened more than she spoke. At first, he barely noticed her. She was like part of the background. He assumed she would pass through his life like others, but she noticed him. She noticed how he avoided long talks. She noticed how his eyes changed when people laughed. She noticed the way he stayed calm, even when things went wrong. She sensed effort behind his stillness, and effort meant pain there. First real conversation happened by chance. A short exchange about something ordinary. Nothing deep yet. Something about her voice stayed with him. It was calm, but clear, not soft, not sharpened. He dismissed the feeling quickly. He told himself it was nothing. Days passed and their paths crossed more often. She spoke a little more each time, always simple words, always direct. She did not fill silence just to fill it. She seemed comfortable letting moments breathe. That made him uncomfortable. Silence was his space, not something shared. He began to notice small changes in himself. He listened more carefully when she spoke. He remembered her words later. In the day this bothered him, he did not like carrying other people's voices in his head. He liked his mind empty, yet her words stayed. She spoke about normal things, work life, small struggles, but she spoke with meaning, as if every sentence came from experience. One day she said something simple about being tired of pretending. She did not look at him when she said it, but he felt seen that night. He could not sit in his chair the same way. The quiet felt heavy. Tried to push the thought away. He reminded himself of his rules. Do not feel too much. Do not let people in. Do not react them. Next day he kept his distance. He avoided her eyes. He kept conversations short. She noticed, but she did not question him. She simply gave him space. That confused him more. Most people demanded explanations. She did not. Over time, her presence became a quiet challenge. Not loud, not forceful, just steady. She did not try to change him. She did not tell him who to be. She simply spoke truthfully when she spoken. That was enough to shake him. He began remembering things he had buried, dreams he once had, moments when he cared deeply, moments when he lost control and paid the price. Those memories came back slowly, triggered by nothing more than her words. He told himself this was dangerous. He told himself to stay away, but part of him wanted to understand why her words mattered, why she mattered. That thought scared him. One evening she spoke to him longer than usual. She talked about choices and time, about how people protect themselves until they forget who they are. She did not accuse. She did not push. She just spoke. He felt something shift inside. A tightness he had carried for years moved slightly, not enough to break, but enough to remind him it was there. When she finished speaking, she smiled softly, not expecting a response. She walked away, leaving him standing still. He did not follow. He did not speak, but his control felt weaker than before. The first time in a long while, he wondered how long he could keep resisting him, why he suddenly was not sure. He wanted to. That night he did not sleep. While thoughts came and went, he realized this was only the beginning. Something had started. Dan. No rule he had built felt strong enough to stop it. The days after that night felt different for him. He still followed his routine. He still woke early and worked with focus, but something inside him was awake. Now his thoughts no longer stayed quiet. They moved around her words again and again. He did not like this change. Yet he could not stop it when he saw her again. She acted the same calm, steady, unbothered. She spoke to him as if nothing had happened. That made it harder. He expected questions or pressure, but she gave none. Her normal behavior made his mind louder. He tried to keep things short. He answered politely and walked away, but even a few words from her carried weight. She spoke with intention, not trying to impress, not trying to convince, just speaking what she felt was true. One day she talked about fear. She said, "Fear hides behind habits." She said, "People think routine means strength, but sometimes it is only protection." He felt those words land deep. He did not respond, but his chest felt tight. Wondered how she knew so much without knowing his story. He wondered if she had lived through pain of her own. Calm did not feel learned from comfort. It felt earned. He began noticing how others reacted to her. People relaxed around her. They spoke freely. They laughed more. She listened fully when someone spoke, not interrupting, not judging. That made him uneasy. He had spent years avoiding that kind of attention. He caught himself watching her when she was not aware, not in a physical way, but studying how she moved through space, how she carried no armor, how she allowed herself to be present. That kind of openness felt dangerous to him. One afternoon, she asked him a simple question. She asked why he never talked about himself. Her tone was gentle, not demanding. He froze for a moment. His control almost slipped. Then he gave a small answer. He said he preferred listening. She nodded. She said, "Listening is good, but hiding is heavy." She said that quietly, almost to herself. He heard it clearly that night. He remembered moments from long ago, times when he spoke freely, times when he trusted easily. Those memories ended in loss. Was when he built his walls. That was when control became his shield. The next day he avoided her completely. He stayed busy, changed his schedule. He told himself this was necessary. Distance meant safety. She noticed his absence, but again she did not chase. She did not confront him. She simply waited. That patience disturbed him. When they finally spoke again days later, she said she hoped he was well. Nothing more, no tension, no guilt, just care. That small kindness broke something inside him, not fully but enough to hurt. He realized he was fighting someone who was not attacking. He was resisting words, not actions, truth, not pressure. She spoke again. That day, about time passing quietly, about how people wake up one day and feel empty because they spent years surviving. Instead of living, those words stayed with him longer than he wanted. He started questioning his own rules. Why silence felt safer than honesty. Why control felt stronger than connection. He did not find answers, only discomfort. He told himself he was losing focus. He blamed tiredness. He blamed stress, anything but her. Yet every conversation pulled him closer, not to her body, but to himself too. Parts he had ignored. One evening, as they walked in the same direction, she said something that stopped him. She said, "Strength does not mean never breaking. It means choosing what is worth the risk." He stood still after she left. Those words echoed inside him. For the first time he admitted the truth. He was not afraid of her. He was afraid of what he might feel if he stopped resisting. That realization scared him more than anything before, and he knew then this was no longer a small moment in his life. It was becoming a turning point. He started noticing his own reactions more clearly. He felt tension in his shoulders and chest whenever she spoke. He felt a pull in his mind that he could not explain. He tried to focus on work. He tried to tell himself it was nothing, but it was not nothing. Her words had begun to reach places inside him that he had kept locked for years. Memories of pain and regret, memories of chances lost and trust broken. They came back slowly and unexpectedly, and they hurt more than he remembered. He found himself thinking about her even when he did not want to. What she might be doing, what she might be thinking, how she seemed so unaffected by life around her. He envied that calm and feared it at the same time. He started avoiding people more, even friends. He did not explain why. He did not want anyone to see what was happening. He was aware of the change, and it made him uneasy. When they spoke again, it was brief, but she noticed his distracted mind. She asked a simple question about how he was feeling. He paused. He wanted to give a standard answer, but the truth pushed itself forward. He told her he was fine. She nodded, but did not push. Later that day, he remembered a conversation they had weeks ago. The words about fear and hiding, the words about strength and risk, they echoed in his mind, and he realized they applied to him more than anyone else. He could not stop thinking about the way she had looked at him, Nat, with judgment, not with expectations, just recognition. It strange and uncomfortable. He had not felt that way in years. He began noticing the small ways she impacted people, a gentle word, hooray, patient smile there. It was effortless, and it made him question his own ways of living. He asked himself why he had built walls so high. He refused to trust even his own emotions. He realized it was fear of pain, fear of loss, fear of showing weakness. The more he thought about it, the more he felt a need to understand himself. He wanted to break the patterns he had relied on, but breaking them was terrifying. She became a mirror without trying. Her honesty reflected his own hidden thoughts, and he could not look away. One afternoon, he found himself standing near her without planning. I did not speak, he did not look directly, but he felt exposed even without her knowing. Her voice came softly from across the room. She asked about something simple and ordinary, yet it felt loaded with meaning. It pulled at him. He realized he wanted to respond differently. He wanted to speak truth. He wanted to admit things he had never admitted, but he stopped himself. The internal struggle grew over days. He could not eat properly. He could not sleep fully. He kept replaying their conversations, trying to analyze every word, trying to understand why it affected him so much. He began to notice physical changes, tension in muscles, restlessness in his steps. So even his hands shook slightly when he tried to focus. It scared him because he had always believed control was his strength. He wondered if he would always feel this way or if there was a way to regain calm, but every time he tried to ignore her presence, her words returned. Evan, without her speaking, he began writing notes to himself, thoughts he did not dare to share, reflections on his life, on decisions he regretted. On the walls he had built around his heart, it was the first time in years he had let himself do that. When they crossed paths again, he felt a moment of hesitation, wanted to speak honestly, to share some of what he felt, but he still held back. She spoke, as usual, calm and direct. She asked nothing personal, she said, only what she observed, and left him with a quiet feeling of being seen. He walked away slowly. For the first time in a long time, he felt the weight of control slipping, not fully, not dangerously, but enough to notice. That evening he could not sit still. He paced his room. He thought about what was happening inside him. He realized he had been living in half measure, half feelings, half life. He had not allowed himself full experience of anything he remembered. Times he had ignored opportunities, times he had held back from people, times he had denied his own emotions, and now he felt their cost. He understood that he was at a crossroads. He could continue hiding, continue controlling, continue living in a quiet shallow. He could let go, step into vulnerability, face the fear he had avoided. The thought terrified him, yet it also held a strange attraction. He knew that moving forward meant change, real change, not the kind controlled by routine or habit. He tried to sleep, but the mind would not stop. Thoughts of her presence, her words, onto what they triggered, kept him awake. He realized then that losing control internally was not weakness. It was awakening. It was the beginning of understanding himself, and he could no longer deny. Did not know what would happen next. He did not know if he could face what was coming, but he knew he could not go back to the same quiet life, not after this. Something inside him had shifted, and it would not be ignored. He could not ignore the feeling growing inside him. It was stronger now. It pulled at his thoughts and at his body every time he saw her or even thought of her. He felt tension and longing mixed together. He had never experienced anything like it. Tried to focus on work. He tried to keep his routines tight, but his mind kept returning to her words, the calm, direct way she spoke, the honesty that she did not hide, the way she saw him without judgment. He realized he was losing control, not in a reckless way, but in a way that scared him, because he had always believed that control was safety, and now safety felt uncertain. Walked through the day feeling lighter and heavier at the same time, lighter because he could not pretend anymore, could not deny the impact of her presence, heavier because acknowledging it meant facing feelings he had avoided for years. One afternoon they spoke longer than usual. It was not forced, it was not planned. She mentioned choices and truth. She spoke about living fully and not hiding behind rules. He listened closely, feeling a mix of fear and recognition. Her words were not flattering or flattering. They were simple and honest, yet they pierced through his defenses. He felt exposed without her meaning to expose him. He realized he wanted to respond differently. He wanted to speak truth, to admit how much her words mattered, how much he had been holding back, but he held his tongue. That night he thought about everything, about his life and habits, about the walls he had built around himself. The fear that had controlled him. He realized he had never truly let anyone see him, not fully, not for a long time. He tried to sleep, but thoughts of her came not in a way of desire only, but as reflections of his own inner life. The feelings she had awakened were more than attraction, they were awakening. He remembered moments from childhood and youth times, when he had felt deeply and expressed little, times when he had trusted and lost, times when he had chosen control over connection. He saw patterns he had never admitted to himself, and he realized how deeply they affected him. The next day, he avoided her for a while. He walked different paths and spoke less, yet he could not avoid thinking of her. He kept recalling what she had said and the way she carried herself through life. When they finally spoke, was brief but intense. Her calm voice touched him in ways he could not explain. He found himself listening more than speaking, trying to catch every word, every inflection. Her honesty had created an opening inside him he could not ignore. Eth could not fill it with work or routine. He had to face Eth walked away later, feeling exposed and strangely free, because acknowledging the truth felt heavier and lighter at the same time. Over the following days, he began to notice small things, the way his thoughts returned to her, the way his body felt tension and released, the way he wanted to speak truthfully but feared vulnerability. Realized that losing control did not mean weakness, it meant awakening. Meant facing himself, the parts he had kept hidden, the parts he had denied. He wanted to speak to her fully, to explain what he felt, to admit his inner struggle. But he also feared the consequences. Fear had always been his guide, and now it warned him. One afternoon he decided to take a risk, not a grand risk, not a reckless one, but a small step. He spoke to her about something personal, something he had never shared. Her response was calm and accepting. She did not judge, she did not demand, she simply listened. That made him feel relief and more exposed. At the same time, he realized that her words and presence had changed him. He could not go back to the same life. He could not pretend control was everything he had felt, the awakening of truth, and it could not be ignored. That evening he sat quietly alone, thinking about the changes inside him, about the walls he had built, about the person he was becoming. He felt fear and excitement, the fear of vulnerability and the excitement of freedom. He knew that the next step was the hardest, to admit fully what he felt, to embrace the loss of control, internally to face his own emotions and truth. Could no longer ignore her influence. Her words had shifted him. Her honesty had awakened something he had long denied. He knew he could not go back to the same life. He could feel the change inside him every day. It was subtle and strong at the same time. Every thought of her carried weight. Every word she spoke stayed in his mind long after they parted. He realized he could not hide anymore. He could not ignore what was happening. His walls were crumbling, and he did not resist as much as he once had. He walked through his day more aware of himself. He noticed his heart beating faster at times. He noticed thoughts lingering on things he had long ignored. He noticed the emptiness he had felt for years, filling with questions. Questions about life, questions about choices, questions about fear and honesty. He realized that the fear that had guided him for years had also held him back. He met her again one morning. Their eyes met, tanned for a moment. Nothing needed to be said. He could feel everything without words. It was an unspoken connection. She spoke simply about the day ahead, about small observations, but he listened differently. Every word felt like it carried meaning for him. He wanted to say Moretto, share what he felt inside, but he stopped himself. He realized some things needed time, some truths needed courage. Over the next days he thought more about himself, about the person he had been and about the person he wanted to become. He realized that he had been living half a life, half hidden and half controlled. He started taking small steps toward honesty with himself. First, he allowed himself to feel emotions fully, even fear and uncertainty, even longing and vulnerability. He began to notice changes in his body, tension easing in his shoulders, breathing calmer steps, lighter. It was as if the truth had a weight, but also a release. Remembered conversations with Hura about choices, about living fully, about facing fear, every word replayed in his mind, guiding him slowly. One day he spoke to her more openly than ever. He admitted thoughts he had kept hidden. He spoke about fear, about the past, about wanting to change. She listened calmly, without judgment. Then that gave him relief. It also gave him courage. He realized then that losing control internally was not weakness, was growth. It was understanding himself. It was facing what he had avoided for years. He started seeing life differently, not as something to control completely, but as something to experience fully, with truth and honesty guiding him. He took time each day to reflect, to write thoughts, to understand feelings. He no longer feared what he felt. He simply observed and accepted. He noticed small joys again. Smile from a stranger, a moment of quiet, a word that felt honest. These things filled spaces he had ignored. He realized that the presence of another person could awaken him, not through force, not through drama, but through honesty and understanding. He could not ignore this impact. Over time, he felt lighter, more connected to himself, more willing to face the world without rigid rules. Understood the value of feelings even when they were uncomfortable. He saw her again and felt a calm energy, not confusion, but understanding. They spoke simply and naturally, but he felt deeply connected. He understood that control was not the same as strength. Honesty was stronger. Awareness was stronger. Vulnerability was stronger. He allowed himself to feel fully, to respond to life fully, and to accept the presence of someone else as a guide, not a threat. By the end of this journey, he had changed. He was the same man in the world, but different inside. He carried lessons of honesty, of facing fear, of allowing feelings to exist without being controlled. The woman had never pushed him, had never forced him yet. Her words and presence had awakened him. She had shown him that control could be lost and growth could be gained. He walked through life differently now, aware of himself, aware of emotions, aware of the strength and truth. In truth, he had lost control in the way he feared and gained something far more valuable: full understanding of himself and the courage to live authentically. After everything he had experienced, he felt different in ways he could not describe. His life continued with routines he had always followed, but inside him there was a quiet energy that changed everything. Every day felt more vivid. Every moment felt heavier and lighter at the same time. He woke early. As usual, he walked through familiar streets. He worked with focus, yet his mind was freer than before. He noticed things he had ignored for years: the sound of footsteps, the scent of the air, the way sunlight moved across buildings. He realized he had begun to observe life instead of merely passing through it, had begun to feel life instead of merely controlling it. His thoughts often returned to her, not with obsession, not with fear, but with reflection. She had awakened parts of himself he had forgotten existed, parts that had been buried under years of habit and control. He remembered the first time he truly listened to her words, the way she spoke calmly and honestly, the way she did not expect anything in return, the way she simply reflected truths. That moment had changed everything. Began to apply the lessons in his own life. He allowed himself to speak more honestly. He allowed himself to notice feelings. He allowed himself to see the world without rigid boundaries, and small interactions with people became more meaningful. He listened more than he spoke. He noticed emotions in others. He began to respond with thoughtfulness rather than habit. The effect was subtle at first, but noticeable. People around him seemed drawn to his calm energy. They spoke more freely. They shared more openly. They seemed to trust him without being told. He realized that losing control internally had created freedom externally. He did not need to dominate or direct everything. He could simply exist fully, and that brought a new strength. One afternoon he met her by chance. They walked together for a while, talking about ordinary things. But he noticed how differently he felt. He felt connected and grounded. He felt honesty without fear. He felt freedom in conversation. He reflected on how far he had come, how much he had resisted change, how much he had controlled himself and emotions. He smiled quietly at the growth. She noticed the change in him, not with words, not with judgment, but with a calm observation. A nota smile recognition, he realized that part of his awakening came from seeing himself. Reflected in her understanding, he no longer needed approval or guidance. He had learned to trust his own feelings and judgment. He began to take small steps toward embracing life fully. He pursued interests he had ignored. He explored moments of joy. He allowed himself quiet time to reflect. He allowed himself to enjoy the present. Every step felt new. Every decision carried weight. Every moment held a lesson. He noticed that his internal control was no longer rigid. He allowed flexibility in thought and action. He allowed curiosity to guide him. He allowed emotion to inform his choices. This change affected his work. He approached tasks with more creativity. He approached people with more patience. He approached challenges with calm awareness. Evan's setbacks no longer felt crushing. He saw obstacles as part of the process, not threats to his carefully built walls. He remembered moments of fear from the past, moments when he had held back, moments when control had seemed necessary. He acknowledged them, learned from them, and moved forward. He began writing more frequently thoughts, reflections, lessons learned. He did not share them with anyone. They were for himself, and that practice gave clarity and peace. His conversations with her became more comfortable, more natural, not dependent on words, not measured or controlled, simply human and honest. He began noticing the beauty of connection, the simplicity of listening, fully the power of understanding without judgment. He realized this had always been missing from his life. He walked through his day with awareness. Even mundane tasks carried many, even quiet moments carried depth. He reflected on how her presence had initiated change, but also how he had chosen to respond. Change required both influence and personal courage. He saw the difference between losing control destructively and losing control to awareness. He had learned the latter, and it transformed him. Realized that his life could no longer be lived half-measured, half-hidden. He chose authenticity. He chose honesty. He chose awareness every day. Felt like a new chapter. Every interaction and opportunity, every thought a reflection. He embraced the journey. With calm excitement, he understood the power of words, not commands or demands, but truth spoken quietly and honestly. That was the force that had moved him. He reflected on fear again, saw it as a teacher, not a master. He understood that courage was not absence of fear, but moving forward despite. He began to share small truths with people he trusted. He found relief in openness. He found connection in honesty. He found strength in vulnerability. Awareness of life and self became central. He observed without judging. He listened without measuring. He responded without controlling. He could feel the depth of change in himself, the subtle shift from survival to living, from hiding to seeing, from controlling to experiencing. Every day held moments that reminded him of the journey, moments when he realized how far he had come, moments when he reflected on choices and growth, moments when he felt gratitude for understanding himself. His life continued in routine, but inside him there was freedom to feel freedom, to reflect freedom, to be fully human. He realized that control had been a cage, awareness and honesty had unlocked. He chose to live this way from now on, fully present, fully aware, fully connected. The impact of losing control internally was profound, not destructive, not reckless, but liberating, and he embraced it quietly with understanding and calm. Woke up to the soft light filtering through the window and felt a sense of calm. He had not known in years. The routines he had followed for decades were still there, but they felt lighter, more flexible. He prepared for the day in a quiet way, not hurried, not stressed, just present and aware. As he walked outside, the streets seemed familiar but somehow different. Every sound, every movement felt alive. Every person he passed carried a life and story that he noticed now, with intrusion, not with judgment, but with gentle awareness. He began the morning with tasks that once felt mechanical: cooking breakfast, cleaning his space, preparing for work. Each action was intentionally. Each moment observed fully. Even simple things like boiling water or pouring coffee carried presence. He walked to work, noticing details that had escaped him before: the rustle of leaves in the wind, the distant laughter of children, the rhythm of footsteps on pavement. These things used to pass unnoticed. Now they lingered in his awareness. They brought a subtle joy he had not felt in a long time. At work, he engaged with colleagues differently, not with forceful direction or tight, controlled, but with patience and careful listening. He asked questions and listened fully, not just to the words, but to the emotions behind them. He noticed the subtle cues and gestures, expressions, and tones. He responded not from habit, but from awareness. Woman crossed paths with him in a hallway and smiled. He returned the smile without thought or calculation. A natural acknowledgement of presence. They walked side by side for a few moments, exchanging casual words, but he noticed the depth in her expression, the calmness in her voice, the honesty in her gaze. It reminded him of the journey he had traveled, of how far he had come during a quiet break. He sat outside, observing the world. He watched the sky shift colors, felt the breeze on his skin, and listened to the distant hum of the city. He reflected on the past and the rigidity and control that had dominated his life for so long. He acknowledged the fears that had held him back and the courage it had taken to face them. He thought about his own reactions, how he had felt tension and restlessness, how he had struggled with vulnerability, how he had slowly learned to accept ETH. Realized that every small step toward honesty and openness had contributed to the person he was now. He remembered conversations with the woman, how her words had quietly influenced him, how she had spoken truth without expectation, how she had seen him without judgment. It was not her doing alone. He had chosen to listen to himself too, and acknowledge feelings he had long denied. To embrace the discomfort of growth. Over the next few days, he practiced awareness in every interaction. Work, at home, in the streets, in the quiet moments. He spoke less, but listened more. He noticed more, but judged less. He allowed himself to respond naturally, not controlled by fear, but guided by understanding. One afternoon, he found himself in a conversation with her that lasted longer than usual. They spoke about life, about choices, about the moments that shape a person. He shared thoughts he had never spoken aloud. He spoke of fear, of loss, of mistakes, and of the years spent hiding behind controls. She listened with quiet attention. Her calm presence allowed him to speak freely without fear of judgment. He felt relief in sharing, a weight lifted that he had carried alone for so long. Tension in his chest eased. He realized that vulnerability did not weaken him. It connected him. It made him stronger in ways he had never imagined. He began to notice changes in how others responded to him. They seemed more open, more willing to share, more trusting. It was as if the awareness he carried influenced them subtly. He did not seek this effect. It simply emerged naturally from his own authenticity. Its day brought new insights. Small observations led to larger reflections. Moments of stillness became opportunities to notice thought patterns and reactions. He learned to pause before responding, to choose words carefully, to observe emotions without being overwhelmed. He spent time in solitude, reflecting on the past. He acknowledged regrets and accepted them. He understood that control had been a necessary tool at one point, but it had also limited his growth. He forgave himself for past mistakes and allowed space for changes. Interactions with the woman grew deeper, not in intensity, but in understanding. They spoke of ordinary things and extraordinary insights. He shared feelings he had once hidden. She responded with attention and calmness. They both listened and learned from each other. He began to apply this awareness to challenges. Difficult situations no longer provoked automatic tension. He approached them with patience and observation. He considered multiple perspectives before reacting. He allowed for outcomes that were not entirely within his control. He noticed physical changes in himself, a lighter step, calmer breathing, clearer mind. Even when stress arose, he faced it with awareness rather than panicky, acknowledged the tension and allowed it to pass. He did not fight it or suppress ETH, simply observed and moved forward. In moments of solitude, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The years of control, the fear, the internal struggle. He saw the small decisions that led to growth, the moments of choice that allowed vulnerability. He appreciated the slow unfolding of understanding. He began documenting thoughts and reflections, not as a record, but as a practice. Writing became a mirror to understand emotions and decisions. He did not share these writings. They were a private space to cultivate clarity and self-awareness. He noticed joy in small things, the warmth of the sun on his skin, the scent of flowers, the laughter of people around him. He allowed himself to enjoy these moments without guilt or distraction. Each moment became a chance to practice awareness. He reflected on fear, again the fear that had dominated so much of his life. He saw it now as a guide, not a master. It reminded him to move with caution, but not to avoid living fully. Courage was no longer absence of fear, but movement through its interactions with colleagues. Became smoother. He offered support without expectation. He listened without judgment. He shared insights without imposing. They responded naturally and appreciated his presence. He began to explore new interests, things he had once dismissed or ignored. Music, reading, nature walks, quiet moments, and reflection. Each activity became an opportunity for growth and awareness. He began to notice his own inner dialogue, the habitual judgments and self-criticisms. He observed them without attachment. He allowed thoughts to exist without being controlled by them. This brought calm and clarity. The woman remained a quiet presence in his life, not as a focus of obsession, but as a mirror of honesty and calm. Their conversations and interactions were natural and balanced. They supported each other without pressure. He realized that his life had shifted fundamentally. He was no longer controlled by fear and habit. He was guided by awareness and honesty. He could face challenges calmly. He could connect with people genuinely, could experience moments fully. He continued to reflect on past mistakes, the years of hiding and controlling. He acknowledged them without regret. He understood they had shaped him, but did not define him. He chose to live fully in the present. He noticed that internal control had been a cage. Now it was replaced with freedom, the freedom to feel the full spectrum of emotion, the freedom to connect authentically, the freedom to be fully present in life. He spent time observing nature, the flowing of water, the flight of birds, the growth of plants. He noticed patterns and rhythms and felt connected to the larger world. This practice brought peace and clarity. He began mentoring others, subtly sharing insights and practices without imposing, helping them notice awareness in small actions and reflections. He did not seek recognition or power. He simply offered guidance through example. Daily routines became opportunities for mindfulness. Cooking, cleaning, walking, commuting, even work tasks, each was performed with awareness and care. This brought satisfaction and calm. He noticed changes in his emotional resilience. No longer caused panic or frustration. He could approach them with patience and observation. Mistakes became lessons rather than failures. He began to see the beauty in ordinary life, a smile, a gesture, a word, a moment of quiet. These things carried depth and meaning. Allowed himself to feel them fully. Over time, he reflected on how far he had come, the internal struggle, the awakening, the growth. He acknowledged the role of the woman and his own choice to embrace awareness. He saw the journey as a continuous process. He began to teach himself new ways of thinking, without judgment, speaking with honesty, responding with awareness. 8. Day became a practice of growth and reflection. He did not rush the process. He allowed it to unfold. Naturally, he noticed subtle shifts in perception. Colors seemed brighter, sounds clearer, emotions more nuanced. He felt connected to people, places, and moments in a deeper way. He began to notice the rhythm of his own thoughts and emotions, observing without attachment, allowing awareness to guide responses rather than fear or habit. This brought balance and calm. He spent time reflecting on values mattered most, what he wanted from life, what he wanted to offer others. He clarified intentions and aligned actions. This gave purpose and focus. Interactions with others became more meaningful. He noticed nonverbal cues, subtle shifts in emotion, and Tony responded with empathy and awareness. People responded positively without knowing why. He continued to practice solitude and reflection, writing observations, exploring emotions, and noting patterns. This became a foundation for continued growth. He began to notice how small actions impacted the world. Day, kind word, a listening ear, a patient response. These moments carried meaning beyond immediate perception. He allowed himself to participate fully in life. He reflected on fear again, not as a limiter, but as a guide. It reminded him of lessons learned, of moments faced, of courage exercised. He moved with awareness, not avoidance. He noticed the passing of time with acceptance. Each day held opportunities for growth, reflection, connection, and presence. Welcomed each day with calm readiness, he continued interactions with the woman balanced, authentic, and mutually respectful. Exchanged ideas, observations, and reflections, learning from each other in quiet understanding. He began to notice how his own emotions influenced perception. He practiced observing without reacting, responding. With awareness allowing space for clarity and insight, life became a series of conscious choices. Moments of reflection and awareness, not rushed, not forced, just present and intentional. He continued to notice growth's subtle shifts in perception, understanding, connection, and calm. He embraced the journey as continuous and evolving. He observed moments of joy, gratitude, and clarity to inform understanding. In action, no longer fearing intensity or vulnerability, he practiced patience with self and others, allowing awareness to guide interactions, decisions, and reflections. This brought calm, confidence, and insight. He realized the power of internal control, replaced by conscious awareness, freedom from fear, habit, and rigidity. Ability to connect authentically, experience fully, and act thoughtfully. He continued to live with intention, observing, reflecting, acting, and responding with awareness, each day a chance to practice growth, understanding, and presence. He observed that life was not about control or avoidance, but engagement, awareness, and honesty. This realization shaped his actions, responses, and perceptions. He moved through the world fully present, fully aware, and fully engaged. The lessons learned from internal struggle and external influence became a foundation for ongoing growth. Every interaction, observation, and reflection reinforced the transformation. He had chosen awareness over fear, control over habit, and authenticity over concealment. Continued to cultivate awareness, empathy, patience, honesty, and presence. The journey of understanding self and life remained ongoing, evolving, and profound. He woke up to the soft morning light filtering through the curtains and felt a calm energy inside him. The routines he had maintained for years remained in place, but they carried a new sense of purpose and awareness. He prepared for the day, slowly, intentionally noticing small details and appreciating the simplicity of the moment. As he walked through familiar streets, he noticed life in ways he had not before. Sounds of people talking, the rhythm of footsteps, the subtle movements of leaves in the wind, all of it carried depth and meaning he had once ignored. He observed without judgment and allowed the world to reveal itself. At work, he interacted with colleagues differently. He listened fully without interrupting, asked thoughtful questions, and responded with patience. Noticed subtle emotions in gestures, tones, and expressions, and responded with empathy. This shift created a quiet, positive energy that influenced the people around him. He thought about the changes inside himself and realized how far he had come. He no longer felt the tight control that once dominated his life. He could allow emotions to exist without fear of being overwhelmed. He could respond with awareness instead of habit. He remembered conversations with the woman and the way her words had quietly influenced him. She had not forced anything, but her honesty had opened something within him. Had chosen to listen and reflect, and that choice had shaped his transformation. During breaks, he spent time in quiet observations, sitting on benches, walking slowly, noticing details in his surroundings, the patterns in the sky, the colors of the buildings, the flow of people around him. Each moment became a lesson in awareness and presence. He wrote notes to himself, capturing thoughts, reflections, and observations, not for anyone else, but as a way to understand the mind and emotions. Writing became a mirror to see patterns, choices, and internal shifts. He practiced presence in every interaction, listening, fully responding with thoughtfulness, and observing the impact of his words and actions. He no longer sought to control outcomes, but allowed space for natural responses and growth. In solitude, he reflected on past fears, how control had once felt necessary for safety, how fear had guided many decisions. He acknowledged those experiences without judgment and saw them as part of his journey. He noticed subtle changes in physical awareness. Breathing was calmer, posture more relaxed, muscles carried less tension. Even when challenges arose, he faced them with patience and deliberate attention. explored new interests and activities, things he had once dismissed: walking in nature, reading, observing art, listening to music. These moments became opportunities for reflection, awareness, and enjoyment. He spent time noticing internal dialogue. Habitual thoughts and judgments surfaced, but he observed without attachment. He allowed them to exist without letting them dominate behavior or emotion. Interactions with the woman remained natural, balanced, and authentic there. Exchanges involved shared reflections, casual observations, and honest communication. Supported and learned from each other without expectation or pressure. He noticed the cumulative impact of awareness. Moments of observation and reflection led to subtle but profound internal growth. He became more patient, empathetic, and deliberate. In every choice, he reflected on fear once more, not as a limiter, but as a teacher. It reminded him to move with caution, but also to act authentically and with courage. He understood that courage was not absence of fear, but moving forward despite it. Continued to practice mindfulness in daily routines: cooking, cleaning, commuting, working, and resting. Each moment became an opportunity for awareness and presence. He noticed joy, gratitude, and connection in ordinary moments: the laughter of children, the scent of flowers, the quiet of empty streets. He allowed himself to feel and appreciate these experiences fully. Reflected on the internal transformation that had occurred. Shift from rigid control to flexible awareness, from fear to courage, from concealment to honesty, had taken time, patience, and deliberate attention to reach this state. He engaged with people around him with quiet authenticity, offering support, guidance, and listening without expectation or judgment. His presence became a calm influence without force or direction. He spent time observing nature, the growth of plants, the movement of water, the rhythm of birds. These observations reinforced understanding of life patterns, connection, and awareness. He reflected on past mistakes, choices, and fears, acknowledging them without regret and learning from them. He saw how each experience contributed to growth and understanding. He continued to write reflections, exploring emotions, thoughts, and behaviors, using writing as a tool for clarity, awareness, and personal growth. He practiced patience with himself and others, allowing awareness to guide responses rather than fear or habit. This practice strengthened emotional resilience and understanding. He noticed subtle shifts in perception and awareness. Colors sounded and emotions appeared more nuanced. He felt connected to the world, people, and moments with depth. He observed the interplay between emotions, thoughts, and actions, noticing habitual patterns and choosing awareness, instead responding thoughtfully instead of reacting automatically. He spent time reflecting on values, priorities, and intentions, lining actions with understanding and presence. This practice brought purpose and clarity to daily life. Interactions with others became more meaningful. He listened deeply, responded with empathy, and observed without judgment. People naturally responded to his calm awareness. He continued to practice solitude, reflection, and observation, cultivating awareness, understanding, and emotional clarity. This became the foundation for ongoing personal growth. He noticed the impact of small actions, kind words, attentive listening, patient responses, and subtle gestures. They carried meaning beyond immediate perception. T reflected on the nature of life and internal control, understanding that true freedom came from awareness, honesty, and authenticity, and from rigid habits or avoidance of emotion. He moved through the world fully present, fully aware, and fully engaged, observing, reflecting, and responding. With calm intentionality, interaction, observation, and reflection reinforced internal growth. He chose awareness over fear, habit, and authenticity over concealment. He cultivated empathy, patience, honesty, and presence, continuously understanding that personal growth is ongoing and evolving. He embraced the journey of self-awareness, connection, and reflection. Each day presented opportunities to practice mindfulness, awareness, and authentic engagement. He welcomed the unfolding of life with calmness and acceptance. He reflected on the lessons learned from fear, struggle, and internal awakening, applying them consistently in thoughts, actions, and interactions. That transformation is gradual, deliberate, and continuous. He continued to engage With the woman naturally and authentically sharing insights, reflections, and casual observations, supporting each other's understanding and growth without expectation, observed how awareness influenced perception and interaction, responding thoughtfully and empathetically rather than automatically cultivating connection, understanding, and calm. He noticed how small, consistent practices of observation, reflection, and awareness accumulated into profound internal change. He allowed each moment to contribute to ongoing growth, and presence life became an ongoing practice of mindful observation, thoughtful response, and authentic engagement. He moved with awareness, clarity, and calm through all circumstances. Reflected on the journey from internal struggle to awareness and authenticity, acknowledging the influence of experiences, relationships, and choices, embracing continuous personal growth and presence every day became an opportunity for learning, reflection, awareness, and authentic engagement. He remained attentive to thoughts, emotions, actions, and interactions. He continued cultivating presence, patience, empathy, and awareness. And personal growth are ongoing processes. He observed the subtle interplay of life experience, awareness, and personal choice, applying lessons from past struggles and insights to current interactions and decisions. He embraced life fully with awareness, authenticity, and presence, observing, reflecting, responding, and learning. Continuously, the journey remained ongoing, evolving, and profound. He remained committed to conscious awareness, personal growth, authentic connection, and mindful engagement with the world around him.